And I have started the screen record. So, it's all good.
Alright, great. Alright. Alright, everyone ready? Okay. Um, Start off. Hey, bro, what's up? I'm Vin,
And I'm Cullen.
and welcome to our podcast. So this week, it's going to be a little bit different. Obviously, you can tell. This is going to be Marriage Part 2, and this time we're going to have Jeff and Cass be the guests. Last week we talked about marriage on the male side, and on this week we're gonna have the female perspective, specifically with Cass. Cass, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Cass, Jeff's wife. We've been married for just shy of 4 years now. Um, yeah, I know we're gonna get a lot deeper into marriage tonight, and I'm eager to see, what comes out in this type of space, because obviously, like, we have our own style of communication, but sharing that with the world, I don't know, I'm interested to see, like, the good, bad, the ugly, the beautiful, all of it.
Yeah. So it's double meaning of this podcast of, oh, Jeff is our guest, while Cullen is honorary co-host, and also for y'all two as a couple of like, oh, this is the first time we get to be interviewed and looked at as a couple, as a married couple,
Mm-hmm.
So, Cass, if you want to start off with the quote of the week.
Yeah, our quote of the week is: "A perfect marriage is just two imperfect people who refuse to give up on each other."
Okay. Why'd you pick this one?
I picked that one because it really resonates specifically now, where I would not say we're having marital issues, but I will say that a lot of people might agree that 2024 is kind of a sucky year. And we have just had a lot of hurdles, and we're not giving up on each other during these hard times. It's not us versus him if there are financial issues. It's him and I versus the problem. So that one really resonated today.
No. Jeff, what do you think?
How can I top that?
It's all how you feel about the quote.
I had what I was going to say until she said her last part, because I was going to be like, it's all, as I've said multiple times on the show here, it's always her and I versus the issue, not her and I versus each other.
Awesome. Yeah.
It just rings true then if I say it. Like, it is something we take very seriously.
For those listening, by the way, she went into this blind. So.
Completely.
There's been no pre-coaching on what to say beforehand or what to expect.
Yeah, Jeff, you didn't try to stock up some good answers to make everything look perfect, right?
To be completely honest, I didn't even look at your guys' list of questions.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Even though I have them up on the second screen here, I still haven't looked at them.
Sure.
Very good.
Yeah.
Organic is the name of the game, I think, because it's not about being right or being perfect. All of what this is about is just getting kind of an honest take on what y'all's perspective on marriage is,
and that's how I wanted to do it. Like, this is the one episode we've done so far that I have done zero prep work. Yes. Other than ask my wife to be the guest.
It's very improv and just, not the right thing to say, but the true thing to say. So going into this blind, you're getting my true, honest reaction instead of something that I rehearsed to tell you.
Love it. Okay, because I'm curious, Cass, this is the first time I'm meeting you.
Yeah.
How'd y'all meet? I want to hear your version of the story.
Fuck. Okay, so I have the funny version and, like, the heartwarming version. So I'll start with the heartwarming and end with the funny. So we met in a program at the university that we went to because he was a phys ed major and I was a special ed major. So we did a collaboration volunteer thing. So each week we would bus in students from schools in the surrounding area and really have an adapted physical education class for these kids that needed one. We, met volunteering together, teaching together. I noticed that he noticed me, and he just would not say anything. And I'm come on, dude. Like, it's obvious at this point. Like, just rip the Band-Aid off. Say hi. Something. And he didn't. So I had noticed I have a tattoo of a rosary, and he also has a tattoo of a rosary. It's the same one. So I was like, all right, I'll be the one that breaks the ice. And I was like, hey, nice tattoo. I have the same one. And, kind of just started talking from there, getting coffee in the mornings before we would go to this clinic. And one morning afterwards, we're leaving and walking out to the parking lot, and I'm going to my car, but he's kind of speeding around the corner and, does the little brake check like he's going to hit me with his car. And that's kind of the funny story that I tell people when they're like, how'd you meet? And I'm like, well, he tried to hit me with his car.
Oh, perfect. Oh,
and
That's it. No,
I knew I was going to take her out one way or the other.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And it got my attention to the point where I didn't know his last name. I just knew that his name was Jeff. And I wanted to find him on Facebook and kind of snoop a little bit, but what's going to come up when you search Jeff on Facebook? Everything and anything. So I was kind of creepy. I hate admitting this now. This is going to be on the internet. Just how FBI I was. Not am. Was. I went into our email list. went into the email list for our clinic, and luckily he was the only Jeff. So I was like, oh, Jeff Blokel at WIU? Okay. Search that name on Facebook, friend request.
We got him.
Yeah.
Now, she left part of that out on the whole I wouldn't make the first move. It is true I did not speak first. However, I did technically make the first move to get close because she was not in my group for that clinic. She was partnered with another person from the PE program. I got there that week an hour early to set my station up. So that way when he got there, I walked up, I was like, hey man, you want some help setting your station up this week? So that way I would be in her vicinity. She left that part out.
Yeah.
But I was the one that spoke first.
I was going to say, did you have any intention at all of saying anything, or you just wanted to get a little closer?
Absolutely not. I froze.
That's no judgment. Hey, sometimes you just got to get a little closer. I get that.
I had a plan. The plan did not go out because as soon as she walked up and started, I was like,
Amazing.
It's funny because in the dating episode, me had come up and she had mentioned, I talked about how she stalked me for 2 months at my job, right? She comes and just sits there, just hoping for that 1 second of glimpse of, this Asian dude at work. And then I, 2 months later, finally went to talk. So her mantra is stalking works, guys. She tells girls, stalking works.
for legal reasons, that was a joke.
Yeah.
No, I went through FBI detective mode and searched and found him through my work email list and found him on Facebook or whatever. So I'm like, what are y'all girls doing? But obviously, the two cases, 2 for 2 here, stalking him.
Yeah, women know how to do their social media research, and I guess in-person research when it comes to Mia.
So because I'm curious, what was it that drew you to Jeff? Because you knew Jeff was into you, obviously. Mm-hmm. Sometimes when a guy is into a girl, it's not obvious, and sometimes it really is. And something tells me this is more the latter than the former. What made you go, yeah, you know what? If he's not going to make the move, I want to make the move.
So I could tell that he was interested. And, we started getting coffee, and he was expressing more interest, but never really coming out and saying anything. And a few months prior to this, I had just gotten out of a long-term relationship. I was with him for 3 years, so I wasn't exactly looking, but I was like, I'm still gonna scope the field of, what's available for when I am ready. And I can't remember if you came out and said something straight and I put you in the friend zone or if it was assumed. But I was just not quite ready for relationship and just really wanted to be friends. So we were. And that didn't last super long because I could tell that he was very genuine when I had been played by other guys before him. What really spoke to me is very early on, establishing I want to be friends, he was open and honest with his emotions. And there was one night, he was at work, I'm texting him, and I could tell he was kind of off, and I'm like, are you okay? And he's like, no, not really, it's a bad night. And knowing, like, the prior military history and PTSD there, he's just like, it's getting under my skin tonight. And even knowing that there wasn't something romantic there yet, I was still like, do you want to come over and spend the night tonight? Not, anything crazy, but just so that you're not alone. And even having that just platonic night together, I knew that he wasn't like other men. Because, okay, yeah, I'm sharing my bed with you, but you're not trying to get into my pants. You're just using this as an opportunity to connect with me as a human. And so that's when I was like, oh, okay, this guy can come onto the friend zone.
So that's fascinating. You made that move, quote unquote, to chat with him about the rosary, fully knowing that you were in a friend zone, that you would friend zone him and that you weren't looking for a relationship at the time.
Mostly, yeah. I would say that, like, I had an interest in seeing who was out there, but I was still very cautious of entering any sort of relationship, and I had to build some sort of foundation of trust first before I was hurt by somebody again.
Yeah. Wow. Jeff, how was that?
I mean, spot on. What happened?
Well, I mean, how was it for you? Because it sounds like from the get-go, it was fairly clear that it was going to be platonic and just a friendly relationship.
Yeah, how did you react to being in the friend zone? Like, did you even know you were in the friend zone?
Nope.
Oh,
okay. Yeah, that's kind of where I was going with that. Of like, was there any explicit, like, hey, I'm not looking for anything right now. I just want to be friends. If not, you were just rolling. You were just doing you.
It was more so I was just doing me, like...
Okay. Yeah.
Minus the one night, like, cause that's a very factual story, like, I had a very bad night at work, like, and she did invite me over and nothing happened, like, rolled over, went to sleep. It was just nice to be with someone that night, but minus that day, every time we went out for coffee or I invited her out, that was me definitely trying to throw some shit down.
It was Jeff on his game. Okay.
Yeah. And after that night, I was really more open to letting that happen and reciprocating and seeing where it would go, knowing that we had that night. He wasn't going to cross boundaries right out the gate, and he was willing to be vulnerable with me. So.
Yeah. Wow. How special is that? Golly. How soon was that? So paint me a picture of a timeline. Was this like y'all went to coffee 3 times in 3 days? Or this was like a couple weeks later y'all had been talking a little bit?
Well, so that clinic was once a week.
Okay. Okay, so it was at least 3 weeks. Or at least a few, if you went and got
but
coffee.
I'd say we got coffee probably 2 or 3 times in between that.
I know it was still chilly outside because we were in jackets, so I think it was around March or April.
Or beginning of the year. Okay.
Between like the February and April time frame.
Right.
And the clinic started mid-January.
Mhm.
Okay,
So,
this was a few
month
months.
and a half, 2 months maybe.
And we started dating
May 17th. Right?
May 5th.
Boy,
Fifth.
Cinco de Mayo.
oh my god.
Hey, I remember
We
the
can
wedding
put that out.
anniversary. The dating anniversary is a little
podcast.
fuzzy.
We can edit
Our wedding
that out.
anniversary is in 15 days.
At a point. That's the one that matters.
And you know the days. Wow, I didn't even know that.
It's October 10th.
Mhm.
Unless
So
there's a
then-
31st this month. I can't remember.
For both of y'all, what was the moment y'all knew y'all wanted to marry each other? Because I'm gonna assume it's gonna be at different points, or maybe it was at the exact same point.
So, the moment that I knew or was open to it, I actually wrote into my vows. And it was when we decided to start dating. Because, at first we started kind of platonic, flirtatious, then it was a lot more flirtatious. And we were at a friend's birthday party on Cinco de Mayo. And I had a couple beers, and of course I had to bring it up, like, okay, so what are we? Where is this going? You haven't officially asked me to be your girlfriend or anything like that, so I need to know what kind of situationship this is, or if it's a relationship. And he had told me that he was weary of being in a relationship after he was also just out of a long-term relationship as well, that he wasn't really interested in the dating game anymore and really wanted to settle down, and he knew what he wanted out of life and wanted to find someone that matched his values, and just didn't want to play around and wanted to make sure that I was on the same page. I'm 20 years old and in college, like, that's kind of the party girl time. He wanted to make sure I wasn't that type of person. And there was no hesitation where I was just like, okay, so does that mean I'm your girlfriend then? Like, if the next person you want to date is your wife, like, is that you asking me? Because I'll say yes.
Wow.
Yeah. And just kind of went from there. So we were like, okay, I guess we're dating. And it worked out because the next person he dated was the person that he married.
So at that time you said 20.
Yeah.
So then why weren't you in the party girl phase? What mindset were you at when you met Jeff?
I was kind of in the midst of my party girl phase before meeting him. I was never that girl in high school. The first time I ever had alcohol was when I went to college. Was very conservative, like, did not do drugs whatsoever. I was like, keep weed away from me. And that was mostly because the person I was with prior to Jeff had drug problems, had overdosed, so I had, no desire to be that party person. And when that breakup happened at that point in my life, then I was like, oh, I guess I'll be that party person. I was clubbing, with my girlfriends in college and whatnot. And that lasted for the couple months up until I met him. And that's when I really kind of calmed down, and I think I got that out of my system. And just was not interested in continuing that party girl lifestyle when I had the opportunity to settle down and have something stable with him.
Wow, yeah. So was it more of a conscious decision? You were like, okay, I met a good, genuine dude. I need to settle down. I don't care about the partying and alcohol and stuff like that.
Yep.
I mean,
Like,
we still partied, just
we still had
not
our
as
fun.
singles. We just went to parties together.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think when we think of party girl phase, it's more of like a, like not free for all. No strings attached. Going out every, kind of being reckless.
One night stands, bringing people home from the bar, that type of thing. Yeah. that was
right. So obviously not specifically parties themselves, but more of the behaviors associated with it.
yes.
Um, okay, no, that's actually crazy to hear you at 20 years old deciding that. That is very uncommon. Um,
Yeah.
Even my sister right now, she's 21, 22, and I have to kind of talk her, through about like, okay, you tell me you want to find your husband, your future, and you say you want a good marriage, then you need to show the behaviors of that. Stop having these one night stands, stop using Tinder and stuff like that. Um, but she kind of doesn't see it. So you at 20 being able to do that is wild to me.
Yeah, like at the time I felt, like very mature and I had my shit together, but now looking back at it, like, yeah, damn, I was only 20. I wasn't even like of legal drinking age at that point. And when we got married, I was 23. And yeah, like it happened very fast. I was young, but yeah, no regrets. Or do I think that it was, I don't know, a childish mindset? Yeah, I didn't feel like juvenile.
Yes, you say that you were ready to jump into that. That when he said like I'm looking for a girl to marry, and you were like I can be that girl. Walk me through in your head at that moment what marriage looked like to you, 20-year-old Cass about to begin the relationship versus marriage now, and how close or far apart are those expectations and the reality?
So I will say the expectation and the reality could not be more different.
Hey,
Um, so my expectation, on that night where I was like, okay, sure, and this is the vision that we have. At that point, we're both majoring in education, and at that point, I really saw myself having children, and thought, dang, like this is going to be awesome. We're both teachers. So then it's really just the early years we would have to get through with the kids in daycare. And then once they're in school, we're on the same schedule. And I'm planning all of that way in advance. And yeah, got married, said I do, still had those visions. And then it couldn't be more different. Neither of us are teaching anymore. We both got the heck out of education. It was just, no, it's so broken. So, not only was that vision of a consistent schedule that's the same for us completely, thrown out the window of this idea of marriage, it's also career changes. So, that was a big adjustment. Realizing that kids are not in the picture for us, that changes it drastically. So here I was thinking, oh, we're going to have this house and we're going to have this job and this salary and these schedules, and absolutely nothing of what I thought was going to happen happened. But that doesn't make it a bad thing, where I've been in therapy to cope with the fact that life is not how I expected it to be, but that's okay. And even if the circumstances are different, I still have the person that I made those vows to, and that didn't change. Whether, in sickness and in health, for richer or poor, like this year on its own, where he was unemployed for multiple months, one of the biggest conflicts in a marriage is finances. And that could have been a very damning thing for other people. But at least we have that methodology of it's you and I versus the problem of, okay, it's you and me versus this issue of unemployment. How do we fix this? Not me getting mad at him because he wanted to leave a toxic work environment.
That's a
Uh-oh.
Oh no.
We lost you, Vin.
Oh, you lost me?
You're back now.
Hello?
You're
Okay.
back.
Oh,
It
okay.
Now we're good.
it
Okay.
completely froze. We couldn't hear you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, my Wi-Fi. So I think that's freaking amazing. Of like, Jeff has been mentioning the past few weeks of like, yeah, it's me and Cass versus the problem, not me and Cass versus each other. And I didn't have context for it until right now, and hearing it from Cass is like so surreal. It's such a refreshing take on like a relationships in general, right? Um, how? Sorry, let me think of how to phrase this question. What got you to that point? How did you? Was it you yourself that kind of came up with the idea of like, okay, I'm not gonna blame Jeff for his shortcomings. It's I want to work together with Jeff. How did you come up with that yourself, or was that something y'all two kind of grew together in figuring out?
I think we had to grow together to figure out that mindset of, him and I versus the problem and not, me versus him. Because I'd say in the early years of our relationship, that's how conflict would happen. It was just very head to head, him versus me, and like, this is how I feel, this is how you did me wrong, instead of, you know, this is how I feel because of your actions. What can we do? Like, was there something that I did that made you bite my head off that day? So instead of me getting angry at you for just snapping at me, like, whoa, okay, pump the brakes. That's not the respectful way to talk to your wife. What's going on? Let's find the root of the problem together. And it can be as simple as that.
Was that just with time? Was that something that y'all heard from somebody or read somewhere or found?
Combination. So
Yeah.
I'll hop in on this one. I think we started that shift after our first like massive blow up. Like, it was a huge misunderstanding. Like, I'm not going to go into details on what it was, but in the end of it, like, I wanted to walk away to cool my head off. She wanted to discuss it right then and there, and it just turned into us screaming at each other. Until finally, like, I went home, was like, I'm taking the fucking night, like, don't want to fucking speak to you. I don't remember if we apologized to each other the next day or 2 days later, but that was the first and last massive blow up we've had at each other. And after that, we started like, okay, like, there's an issue here, like, let's talk about this.
Yeah, you guys have been married for a little while at that point. Is that right?
No, we were still dating at this point.
We were dating
Okay.
for a year and some change at that point.
So this was like a theoretically relationship ending kind of argument.
Oh yeah.
Like,
And then you just came together, and how did that go? How does that happen between two people?
I mean, there were still some arguments after that where we had to adjust our communication, but I think that big blow up was the catalyst of, we need to figure out how each other communicates best. Because I was that type of person that if something's wrong, I want to settle it right now. I cannot have this little black rain cloud hanging over my head and deal with it later. I want to deal with it right now. And he's the type where he's like, let me take a breather, collect my thoughts, and then we'll come back and talk about this. So having two very different personalities like that caused a lot of issues. Hence that very massive fight. And it wasn't there that quite yet it clicked in where, like, it's us versus the problem. Like, some fights were still, you versus me. But it was realizing, okay, we need to establish boundaries with our communication where, Cass, you should not chase after Jeff if he needs space. Give him that space. But also, Jeff, don't leave Cass waiting too long to resolve this issue.
Yeah.
And it's compromise.
Yep. That's awesome.
I always find it really, really impressive, and I have so much admiration for people who can look at their spouse or their significant other and say, "Yeah, we were pretty bad at that," and just be very open and very transparent of like, we were not good at that, and we did a lot of things wrong at the beginning, but we grew out of it, or we've changed, or someone who can say, I handled this very poorly in the past, and that there's no shame or no like desire to cover it up, but to be very transparent and very open about it. Like,
I mean, we're humans. Humans make mistakes.
Yeah.
And that alone is mature. Oh.
But the crazy part is like, so many people kind of go into relationships trying to find that perfect partner, right? Like the right partner that will, save me or make me get to point A to point B, and it's just not the case. It's not, you don't wait for the perfect person, you wait for the right person. There's like a difference there. So I think y'all are perfect examples of like, okay, we're not perfect, but we know we're imperfect, and we're willing to work through that.
You saying that, like, find the perfect person, it reminds me of a quote. I can't for the life of me remember where I heard this or when I heard it, but like, I don't think you should look for the perfect person, because the quote that I had heard was, find someone you can love for their imperfections. So I think you should less look for the perfect person and look like for someone that, like, this is a quirk about you, but that's something I love.
I like to tell people like, oh, you should be happy with yourself first and find the person that complements it, not trying to find someone to make you happy. Yeah. So going back, Jeff, I was interested to hear, when did you when did you realize you wanted to marry Cass?
Pretty early on.
I
know well, that conversation she had mentioned did happen. Like, we were sitting down one night, and I was like, I am looking for the long haul, because I had already had my party phase. Like, for lack of better terms, when I got home from Afghanistan, like, I had a bad phase where I was blackout drunk 6 nights a week. Like, any drug that was put in front of me, I was like, all right. Like, no questions asked. I was in a fucking rough spot. And I had finally, like, quit all that, met her, and she got me to give up my last vice, which was smoking cigarettes. And we had that conversation of where I was like, I'm not really into the whole dating thing. Like, I'm looking for someone to actually be with. And we started having more and more conversations, realized that, our goals in life were aligned. Like she said, we were both going to be teachers. We both wanted kids. She agreed to my one traditional value of my partner has to take my last name. And she was like, okay, cool. I'm fine with that. So, like, I knew pretty early on, like, she's got a good head on her shoulders. I was like, this is someone I could see myself being with.
Oh, and the age, what's the age gap?
4 years.
4 years? Okay, that's actually not even that big. So, but her being at 20, you weren't like worried or anything. You didn't have any doubts or anything.
Nope. Because to be honest, I didn't even know how old she was for a while.
Okay, well, nice. Well,
Jeff, you said, she's got a good head on her shoulders. I could see this being someone I could end up with. When did that change from I could see this as potentially someone to like, yeah, this is it. She's the one.
Once we moved in together.
Okay.
Because I was able to see how she was, like, in her natural element. Like, not at school or not, at her parents' house. It was...
When was that?
we moved in together in 20...
It was June of 2018.
18?
So it was about a year that we had been together.
A year and a month.
Yeah.
This is fast. This might be the first case that I have heard in talking to people in a relationship where the girl is actually ready sooner than the guy. Pretty much everybody I talk to as far as a relationship goes, the guy's like, yeah, I pretty much knew when I saw her the first time. Versus, the girl's like, yeah, I like didn't know him forever. Like I didn't know how old, or I didn't know his last name, or like things like that. But the fact that you, Cass, were ready, like he was like, this is a commitment, and you were like, I'm ready to commit for the rest of my life right now. And Jeff's like, what? But that it was over a year. That's Jeff. What was that year like? If you hadn't gotten to that point, what was that like for you mentally in that relationship?
I mean, we were still learning each other and growing together, like, because we had before we even started dating, we had the conversation of like, we're in it for the long haul, like we're really truly looking for a partner, not just someone to date. So like I went into the relationship of, I want to learn this girl, I want to know everything about her, and this is who I'm wanting to be with. So I didn't go into it with the dating mindset. Like I went into this relationship with the intent of, this is who I'm going to marry. And I held on to the hope that we would get to that point.
Right.
And lo and behold, we did.
Yeah, there was no evidence to the contrary. That seems like a consistency between the both of you of like, yeah, I'm willing to do this, and unless there's something egregious that would make this not happen, I like who you are, and the more that I learn about you, as long as there's no red flags or anything that would hazard me against this is something that I would want to be a part of.
See, but she even accepted the red flags, like with my past with drugs. Like, I know a lot of people don't like to talk about their past, like,
sure.
My past was a massive fucking red flag, and she was like, well, do you do drugs now? And I was like, no. And she was like, okay, we're good.
Then, what? So I guess at the time it would be during y'all's engagement. What would have been deal breakers for both of y'all? I wanted to hear both sides of, what would have what would it have taken?
Yep.
What would it have taken, for one of y'all to call off the marriage?
Two things.
Okay.
Cheating and beating.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's pretty
Okay,
clear.
and then Cass, for you?
That's really, like when we went into, the discussion of we're going to get married and what, would be a deal breaker, because 50% of marriages end in divorce. Like, that's not the goal. So what are we going to do to make sure that we have a successful marriage? What are the deal breakers that would result in that divorce type situation? And we had both said, the two biggest red flags are cheating and beating. Those are the unforgivable acts that will end a relationship and break that trust beyond repair. And pretty much anything else besides, obvious, like, emotional abuse would be able to be worked through. Like myself, I have a ton of health issues, and with those health issues, realized, we had this vision of we want children and a family. Okay, I realized after the fact that we're married that I cannot provide that. So I had even offered him that out of, we went into this marriage with the expectation that we would have children. Mm-hmm. And because I cannot provide that to you, like, I know that you love me, but, if I can't provide that, you have the freedom to walk away and find someone that can. He's like, no, in sickness and in health, this is not something that can be controlled. Life changes, and we will work through that grief process together. It's you and I versus the problem. And there's really no placing blame for those things that can't be controlled. Or like when he was unemployed, like not placing the blame, how can we work through this together?
I'm really glad we did this episode. I really love hearing Cass, like, yes, my husband was a bum for a bit, but I didn't care, right? In sickness, health. Jeff, it's like, oh, one of my values in life was to have a family, but I, I know what a marriage is supposed to be. I know how what, what role that needs to be held to make those fulfilling and satisfactory, and I'm not gonna break those just because of, yeah, no, I love hearing it.
No, there was a grieving process. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Like, was I upset with her? Absolutely not. But did I mourn, for lack of better terms, the loss of what could have been? Absolutely. And it did take me quite some time to accept it.
Shit, we still have days where, we have our nieces and nephews that we cherish, and like there are times where either of us would be like, oh, damn, like if only to know like what that would be like, but we can't control everything, and we've both done our therapy and had our discussions with each other, and yeah, the grieving process is a roller coaster with a bunch of the different stages, but at least we've both reached acceptance. So.
And it wasn't one offer like she made it sound. It was for like a week straight. She was like, I'll sign the papers. You can walk away. Like, go find someone that'll give you kids. And I was like, but that person won't be you.
Yeah.
You're so cheesy, Jeff. That's so nice. That's so nice. It's really interesting to me because Jeff, would or would not have called kids a non-negotiable?
In the beginning, it was a non-negotiable, and we had that conversation like before we even agreed to date. I was like, I want kids. If you don't want kids, tell me now, and this won't even start. And she's like, I want kids.
Which is why, Cass, you felt the need to go to him and say, look, we agreed that we had these non-negotiables, and I have, for lack of a better term, breached that contract. Like, you want kids, I know this is non-negotiable. I don't need to try to negotiate. I understand.
Yeah.
Jeff, what changed?
It's circumstance. So, if, like, this is going to make me sound like a fucking asshole, but if her mental state had changed and she was just like, I don't want kids anymore, then that would have been more of the, you breached this contract. But the fact that it's, like, her physical body, her health conditions, right. We got multiple medical opinions, and every single doctor was like, you could have one. Like, but you're probably not going to see it grow up. And we made the decision together, like, it's not worth losing my partner to have a child. I would rather have my partner and go forward in life together with her versus, there's a chance we could get lucky and, she survived the childbirth and we get our one miracle baby.
Or, we're even lucky enough to get to that point because so many of my issues and surgeries have likely caused infertility. But
yeah, because it was medical, like, I don't view her any less. She is still my wife, my one and only. Because it was medical, like, that non-negotiable went out the window.
What is adoption off the table?
For me, not for her.
Okay.
So that's like my one thing where I know I get judged by people. I have nothing but respect for people that adopt children that need homes.
Sure.
I don't make a whole lot of money, and kids are expensive. Like, and I know it's a very shallow reason to not open your home to a child in need. But my mindset, and this is where the assholeness comes off, like, if I'm going to make that investment of hundreds of thousands of dollars over a 20-year span, I would personally prefer if it was my own flesh and blood.
Well, I mean, that's not like too much of an a-hole move because, like, biologically, you want to spread the offspring of your own because you believe, like, okay, this is my lineage, this is my blood, these are kind of my genetics. Like, I believe, yeah. So, I don't think it's too much of a stretch to be like,
Yeah, I've had a few people who are like, "You wouldn't adopt? You're a dick." I'm like,
well, and the thing is,
I
like,
don't have money.
Yeah.
I hate the holier than thou arguments of, like, I don't actually want to go into this. Never mind. I'm gonna stop myself.
But I'll interject with the adoption thing, where it was a compromise discussion on both sides. Because, we have all this information put in front of us that I am likely infertile, and if by chance I got pregnant, it likely would not survive, go to term, albeit. So then I'm like, okay, we had agreed before going into a marriage that we wanted children. I can't provide this myself. Like, what about adoption? And he had that boundary of, no, I really want biological children. I don't want to adopt. It's a long process. It's expensive. And I really envisioned having, half of me, half of you, in creating, this person together. And it's like, okay, I would have really been on board for adoption and would have loved that option to still be a mother. But because that's a boundary, no, I'm not going to push quite literally someone else's child on him just for the sake of having children. So then, okay, there's that compromise of we will change our expectations and we will be dog parents.
Now, there is an exception to the adoption, like our niece and nephews. Like, if something happened to my sister or her brother, like, we would take, our niece or our nephews, but that's really the only adoption clause, I guess, if you want to say it.
Yeah.
And Cass, for you, the argument boiling down to, I'm okay with not being a mother if Jeff doesn't want to be the father. Like, how does that work for you? In just a very plain way to say it. Like, I think, because you were like, I would be willing to be a mother, but if Jeff didn't want to be the father, then I don't want to be the mother, kind of thing.
For, like, the adoption situation?
Yeah, for the adoption situation specifically.
Yeah, where I was definitely very open-minded with that, or even fostering, because, I went into education for a love of children and wanting to care for them and nurture them. And, because that was a boundary for him and something very important, even if others don't quite understand it, just like he had that one traditional deal breaker of, hey, if we get married, you have to take my last name. Like, as outdated as that may sound, it's something important to me. So, okay, if it's important to you, I will make it important to me. Talking about children, if it's important to you that that child has our DNA, then it's important to me. And, if we can't find a workaround with that, then we will be, I was going to use the word content, but I can't even say that I'm content with you. I am, like, there's no word to quite describe, like, how lucky I feel to have a partner like him, and he fulfills me, and I don't need to have that third and or fourth person in my family to feel fulfilled. He is enough for me. More than enough. So.
Oh. So going along with that, then how what does married life look like for you, Cass, comparing to when y'all were just dating engagement then? Because, um, yeah, no, y'all went into this marriage of like, basically, I want to praise the fact of y'all both went into it of, okay, I care about each other, rather than of like, there's a lot of selfish reasons people start dating and then a lot of times getting married, right? And hence the divorce rate being at where it's at. It's gonna be a lot of, personal reasons. But y'all, like, just hearing y'all talk, it's like y'all are so selfless. So, I'm interested to hear what your your mindset and your viewpoint on your married life compared to when you were just dating and engaged.
It was a change when we were dating. Jeff said that it really clicked for him that he wanted to marry me when we lived together. And I definitely think that's very true. Like, people should live together before getting married, because that can be such a deal breaker. And at that point, we had always had roommates. It was never just the two of us living together. And even when we got married, we lived in our house together for a total of like 6 days because my parents sold their house and needed to vacate. So we opened our home and we're like, hey, stay with us until, you figure out where you're gonna buy or build your next home. So yeah, it was 6 days after we got married, my parents moved in with us.
That's not a bad thing, though. Her dad is a chef. I was eating great.
Now you're eating Kraft's mac and cheese. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was an adjustment to figure out married life while living with my parents. Well, they were living with us, which was a weird dynamic as well, because it's not like, hey, you're under my roof, it's my rules. Like, oh, how the turntables, Mom. Now you're under my roof and my rules. And I think we finally settled into what our married life was going to look like when we moved to Texas 3 years ago. So we've been married 4 years. That first year of marriage was very rocky. I will say that was the only time that the word divorce was thrown around, was within those first 6 months. And yeah, after that year, and we moved down here, and we really settled into our groove, did it become the marriage that I really envisioned it would be.
Why was a divorce a topic of subject in the beginning?
We were working different schedules was the biggest one. I worked overnights and she was teaching. So
yeah.
I would get home from work to wake her up so she could go to school. Mm-hmm. And when she got home from school, like 2 or 3 hours later, she would then wake me up so I could eat my breakfast, their dinner, and then I would go to work.
Right.
So, and that lasted for essentially the first 6 months of our marriage, 7 months of our marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And no, because I started that job in December, we got married in October, so 2 months into our marriage is when that started. And the distance was a big problem because we literally saw each other 2 hours a day.
If that.
5 days a week.
And even on weekends, he didn't want to mess up his sleep schedule too much. So he was up during the night, like we were still on opposite hours. So it's like you're in that honeymoon phase of being married, living with parents / in-laws, while having this very stressful schedule. And yeah, there was not a whole lot of time for communication. There was not a lot of privacy living with my parents. And yeah, things got very heated where I was like, I can't do this. I feel like I'm married but alone. Like something's got to change. And I was like, maybe we should look into couples counseling. And he kind of had the opinion of, well, if we're only married for 6 months and you're already suggesting couples counseling, we might as well just get divorced. And that was the one time that word was thrown out in our marriage. And at that point, I had reached out to one of his very close friends and sat down with him and his wife, and I was like, all right, y'all both know us very well. Y'all have good heads on your shoulders. The word divorce was just thrown at me. And, like, how do I figure this out? And they were really ones to help me realize, like, it's him and me versus the problem. Like, Jeff is not the problem. He's doing his job. He's providing. It's just the hours he has no control over. So it's not him. It's the job. So it was figuring out how do we work around that and, you know, compromise on what the schedule will look like for the hours that we do have together until we can find something else that meets both of our needs. And after having that conversation with those friends, it was a lot easier for them to have a conversation with him. I'm like, hey, this is where Cass is sitting, and they were kind of mediators for us. And after that point, the communication got a lot better.
And then how did y'all fix, like, Jeff, you found a new job, or what was the change?
I quit that job when we moved to Texas.
Yeah.
And I never went back to overnights. Since moving here, I've had a couple opportunities for pretty good paying jobs that were overnight, but I turned them down solely because they were overnight, and I didn't want to put her through that again.
Good.
Yeah.
So what was your mindset on saying, hey, like, couples counseling, if we're going to get to that point, like, divorce, like, what was that all about?
Because we had just got married, I was like,
Okay.
that was my mindset. I was like, if we're newlyweds and you're already thinking we need counseling, like, we're fucked.
But don't you think it was like, oh, she's putting in the effort, like, okay, let's go find counsel, let's find some more efforts in trying to make this work. What, like, because in my head, I'm like, oh, my wife wants to make this work. I'm like, let's try to make this work.
So my biggest against it was, like, even, like, before I took that overnight job, we knew it was temporary because we had already planned on moving to Texas. So, like, my mindset was, like, yes, this schedule sucks, but we only have to do it for a few months. Like, I worked that job from December of 20 to July of 21 because we moved in July of 21. So it was a 7-month period that I was working overnights. But we knew going into it was only going to be temporary. So I was like, yes, like, we kind of have to embrace the suck right now. Like, am I happy that I only see you 2 hours a day? Absolutely not. But it didn't affect me as much as it affected her.
So the idea of, hey, if we need counseling, we might as well get a divorce. It seems like it was less like, oh, we've run into a problem, might as well throw in the towel, and more of a, well, we know that this is temporary, but if that is gonna be a problem, then we obviously don't see eye to eye on the fundamentals of what this is gonna take for us to get what we need.
Essentially.
Okay.
Yeah, where it wasn't counseling. I mean, at that point, neither of us were in therapy like we are today. And I know you didn't view therapy the same as you do today. So, yeah, me even suggesting counseling at that point, having never gone to therapy, probably threw up a red flag for him too. If I was at that point of considering it for both of us, where he's like, whoa, like, we know Cass has needed therapy, and you haven't done it, but if you think we need it 6 months married, there's a problem.
Yeah, and it's also the kind of thing, I don't know, I've heard this stigma for a lot of people. If there's a lack of familiarity with counseling or therapy, that it seems like a very big thing. Mm-hmm. That it's like, oh, therapy, like you need therapy, like it's that bad. When in reality, for anybody who's been to therapy, it's like, no, I need somebody to talk to that's gonna keep me straight. Like I tend to get lost in the weeds sometimes with things, and it's nice to have somebody to talk to. But for someone like Jeff, if you're in that situation of like, couples counseling only happens to people who are like 45, who are in a midlife crisis, and you know what I mean? Like, if you have all these notions of what couples counseling means, you're like, well, I'm still 24 and you're still 20, so before we hit 45, we might as well just get out now. You know, like, I can see where, if that's the notion, that you'd be like, look, we don't even need to bother with that.
So at that point in my life, my views on therapy were negative.
Okay. Yeah.
So this is going to be a lot of information that I probably don't need to put out there. But my only experience with therapy at that point in my life, when we were at that conversation, was before that, when I had gotten medically separated from the Army and diagnosed with PTSD. The state of Illinois seized my guns because of that. So I went to mandated therapy to get my guns back.
Yeah.
So I did not have the best views on therapy.
Yeah.
It wasn't until we moved out here and I actually made the choice for myself to go to therapy that I started having a positive outlook on it.
And now you came full circle having a podcast of mental health.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For my age, I've been told I've been through a lot. And this podcast was a great way to share my experiences for people who may face similar things that I did.
Yeah, that's the whole point.
And for anybody who may be right now feeling largely like you were then, if someone who says, look, like, I don't need therapy, like, I'm fine, I've got buddies, I'm tough, whatever, I'll be fine, I'll get through it, just need to put my head down and grind, I'll be good. No, therapy is helpful. If you're in a relationship and things are getting difficult and you're having trouble and you don't have a mediator, there's a difficulty in communication. Oh, we don't need couples counseling? Wait, you think I can't talk to my wife? I don't know why you turned into Jersey, but like, you think I can't talk to my wife? You know, it's like, well, okay, chill. Like, it's important to have somebody who can help you see eye to eye, like things like that. Cass, where did your positive perception of therapy start? Like, was it always generally positive for you, or like, how does that look like for you?
Ooh.
What made you so quick to say that couples counseling was an option in a way that was positive and not in a way that was scary or like a big huge red flag?
At that point, I'll say, when I had brought up the couples counseling, my views on therapy were indifferent. I'll say that I was hopeful that it could help in the situation. But my views of counseling and therapy were negative. I shouldn't say that I wasn't or hadn't experienced therapy at that point, because I did see the counselor at my high school, but I don't see that as like therapy. So I did speak with a counselor in middle school and high school, having, just emo teenager angst. And having issues with bullying. And it really put a sour taste in my mouth when I had a counselor in high school tell me that, like, people picked on me for a reason. Like, that I was the problem. And that, like, I had this ego, and it's like, okay, I'm coming to you for help as a teenager with suicidal thoughts because of the things that these girls are posting online about me. And you say that I have an ego problem about the things that they are saying, where, yeah, it was just kind of placing the blame on me. So I was like, okay, maybe this type of environment is not for me, and I will not open up about these things because people will just tell me that I'm the problem. And I know that he didn't have the best experiences with therapy. My family did do family counseling when I was very young, but my dad has been in and out of therapy for decades, and he was really the one that showed me, like, it's a positive thing, and it's an outlet that's a safe space where you don't feel you are burdening your family and friends. It's someone that's on the outside, unbiased. It can be very helpful. You just have to find the right one. And just because my first experience with a counselor in high school was negative does not mean that any future therapy or counseling experience will be negative. You just have to find the right person. And when I was in that indifferent stage, he knew that I was kind of rocky with counseling and therapy. So it was like, oh, do you think we're that bad that we need to include this thing that we're both kind of hesitant with? And yeah, now that we've both grown and accepted and kind of brushed off that negative stigma of therapy and accepted it for ourselves, it's viewed a lot more positively. And we even, like, write our appointments on our shared calendar in the kitchen so we know when each other has therapy, and we will check in with each other, like, hey, did therapy go well? Like, I don't need the details, but are you okay today? Like, do you want to talk about it, or do you just need some space?
Nice.
And yeah.
Yeah, and that's the hard part of therapy, right? Is the therapist is also human, so they're also prone to um, life struggles and everything like that. And you would think, oh, you know, this person got certified, they got the degree, they did all this, so you think they've mastered their emotions and the
Mhm.
humanity and everything, but that's just not the case, you know. So that's it's kind of a shocker out there for people sometimes when they go into it. Like, yeah, like y'all the perfect examples. Like, yeah, that sucked, and that was just the bad luck of just being human. You know, we're not robots. So
I've actually heard most therapists have a therapist.
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
I would hope so.
yeah,
If they didn't, I'd be like, who? You're not talking to anybody about all this stuff you're hearing? Okay, you should go see somebody.
yeah.
Yeah, who's the therapist for the therapist? Yeah.
So speaking of like therapy and like y'all's, you know, just talking about divorce and arguments and stuff. Cass, I was interested to see your perspective on just marriage life now. Yeah, what's your opinion?
My opinion on it is, it's like I get to hang out and have a sleepover with my best friend every day. And it's just the coolest thing. Where when you're in that dating phase and, you know, that person has to go home, and you're like, man, like, I already miss them. I don't have to feel that again. Unless, you know, I'm like on a business trip or something. But otherwise, it's like, man, I literally have my rock here at the end of every day. It's especially because I don't do well alone, which is weird because I'm an introvert and I love having my own space. But, like, being home alone or being alone is a big fear of mine. And having him here all the time, he's just my comfort. And I love having that comfort and security every day and knowing that we are on the same page and we communicate and I don't worry about losing what we have, just growing it even more.
Okay, so you have these views personally, and then comparing that to the divorce rates now. What are your thoughts on that? Of like, okay, I'm in a happy marriage. I've worked through all these. Do you understand why divorce rates is so high?
I do. And it's something that him and I have had discussions about because we know numerous friends and family members in the midst of divorces at the moment, or are divorced, or are in tumultuous marriages, and we're just like, wow, like, just feel like we're surrounded by some really negative marriages and relationships, and I can see why the divorce rate is as high as it is. And yeah, I understand it, and I feel grateful that I don't ever anticipate being a part of that statistic.
How do you feel about like remarrying people that have gone through their second, third, or fourth marriage? Jeff.
Big X from Jeff.
Yeah.
I did it once. I won't do it again.
Right.
Like, if something were to happen to her and, you know, she were to pass or something like that, I would not remarry.
Yeah, I wouldn't ever see myself getting married to anybody else, and even in the hypothetical of, you know, death, divorce, you know, what have you, I don't necessarily think it's a red flag if someone has a divorce under their belt. Like, give them the benefit of the doubt, and let them at least explain their side and why things may have ended. For example, with him and I, in our agreement going into marriage, is kids is a deal breaker, and I gave him that out of, hey, I can't provide this, and I know that we've been committed to each other, but, you know, because I can't meet my end of the bargain, do you want to get divorced? That would be a very amicable situation, and I don't think that any future partners should look down upon that, because it's just realizing that people have needs and boundaries, and it's just having that open communication to make sure that boundaries aren't being crossed, needs are being met. But yeah, if someone had multiple divorces under their belts, like, that would definitely be a red flag. But no, neither of us were in that situation. Just the one marriage, and tends to stay that way.
That's kind of crazy. So like, even like, just say this year, you know, something, God forbid, happens, you know, and you're single, you're widowed, or you know, you're only 32, you have a life ahead of you. You just never, like, would you still date or anything, or you just
31. Thank you.
31? Okay, whatever, same thing.
And I mean, like, not to be graphic, like, yes, I date, I have physical needs, but
Right.
I would never marry. Like, Cass is the one and only that I will ever marry, pending divorce, death. Like, I'll date again, but I would never let anyone or want anyone to fill her spot.
And I feel the same way. Like, I couldn't ever have another man hold that place in my heart that he has filled.
Yeah.
But just because I have a difficult time with being alone and by myself. I know that I would struggle if something happened to him for me to continue on solo. So I know that I would want to be at least living with a friend or family, even if it was, like find a girlfriend. I mean, put whatever meaning to that you want. Like, um, yeah, we are being honest here. I told him that is probably the scenario. I would never be with another man. I would definitely switch to the other team and just date women.
Sure.
Yeah, she wouldn't hold his place in your heart, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So, I couple of things. I will provide a little bit of pushback as far as questions go because I'm genuinely curious. I feel that many people would consider a significant difference between becoming a non-married person through divorce rather than through, like, let's say becoming a widow or widower. Like, if an accident happens and your spouse dies, that's not a choice. That's a circumstance that's happened that's out of your control. Versus a divorce is a very intentional act, right? It almost comes back to, like, the conversation about kids. Like, if it was something that Cass said, okay, I just don't want kids now, that's an intentional choice. That's a breach of contract, or however you want to phrase it. Versus if it becomes unavailable and the decision is out of your hands, completely different situation. To me, those things, that similar divide happens in somebody becoming a widow or widower versus making an intentional decision to get divorced. Why is it that if you were to agree as a couple, hey, we are going to, hopefully under decent terms, or maybe not, agree to part ways and divorce, that doesn't allow for a second marriage?
Because in my eyes, like, even if it was the divorce route, like, we just didn't work anymore, something happened, whatever, I would never be able to love someone the way I love her. Nobody would ever fill that hole or fill that spot. So, like, even if I met somebody and started dating and, like, we vibed really well together, I could never put another person on the pedestal I've put her on. Through death or divorce. So, I could not go into another marriage knowing that. Like, I may learn to love that person, but I will never love them as much as I do her.
Cool. I mean, I've seen both ways, but y'all's are also really respectable too. So I don't really.
Yeah, and for me, if it were, to end in walking separate ways, for me, and maybe this could come across as sexist, but it's just based on my personal experiences. Kind of the whole, if you're alone in the woods with a man or a bear, which one would you choose? I'd pick the bear. He's a man that I trust with my life and everything, and I don't know if I could ever love or trust another man the way I do him. And even if something changed and I walked away, or he walked away, yeah, the marriage thing would be a one and done for me. It would be too hard to trust again, knowing how much it took just to trust him after a failed relationship.
Yeah.
If the marriage were to fail, I think I would grieve it so long and so hard that I could not build myself back up again to ever have that kind of connection.
Yeah, to try again to find such a rare person that you can love and trust in the same way that you could love and trust him.
Yeah, and maybe our opinions would be different, like, if that was a true scenario that ended up in divorce and, then it's like, well, oh, yeah, it was easy to say then because we were married, and I can move on now because it's, signed on the dotted line. But yeah, as we sit here today, I don't see any kind of connection touching what I have with him.
Plus, how am I gonna find someone to accept me for how weird I am?
Yeah.
That too. Like, you accept all of my quirks, and even though you may pick on me from time to time because of them, but you don't shame me for those quirks.
I have expected you to shame him. I'm like, yeah, you're freaking weird, but I still love you.
Yeah, me too. Me too. It goes unsaid. I think we all just know that.
Yeah.
We love you.
Yeah,
Love
exactly.
you. It does seem like one of those things where you're like, this is something special. Like when lightning strikes once, I don't ever expect it to happen a second time in
Was
the
it
same
me this
spot.
time that froze?
Oh,
Cass froze.
gas froze.
Nice. I mean, that's the video, right?
Yeah, on the video portion.
It's okay.
I can't hear anything either.
Oh, you can't hear?
Nope. My audio went out too.
She completely froze out.
Oh, let's take
Disconnect to rejoin.
It needs to
I need to pee
be.
anyway, so let her figure it out.
Hello?
Let me stop the bot too.
Let me stop the bot.
I'll go ahead and stop the recording then. I'll just splice the videos together.